Could this be a perfect fit for PSP and Game Boy Advance? It's only $80. Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by. This is Retro Fun Tech. So today let's check out the TrimUI Smart Pro. This is a Linux-based retro handheld device that can play systems up to and including PSP. I'm always excited for a new horizontal form factor device. I'm a little partial to them, but I think the screen will actually be perfect for some of the specific retro systems. So let's check it out. Just a quick note, I'd like to thank GoGameGeek for sending me this device and for the super cool keychain. GoGameGeek did not see this video beforehand, all opinions are my own, and no money was exchanged at all. Now, let's get to the unboxing. Before we unbox the device, let's go over the tech specs real quick. Keep in mind this is more of a budget handheld and we can only run systems up to PSP. This has a 4.9-inch IPS screen. The resolution is 1280 by 720. Note that this is not a touch screen. It's running an all-winner A133P processor. The battery should give around 5 to 6 hours of gameplay depending on what you're playing. There's an OTG port, which we will test later. Not a whole lot of RAM or internal storage, but it does have Wi-Fi, stereo speakers, and a headset jack. So let's see what comes in the box. Here we have normal packaging and the SD card. At the time of making this video, the latest stock firmware is 1.0.3. On this handy card that comes in the box, there are instructions on how to update the device, should you need to. Also, I do want to mention that there is a custom firmware out called Tomato OS by Tech Toy Tinkerer Company. I held off on showing that firmware in this video because it's getting an update soon and it will have Vulkan added, which will potentially help PSP gameplay a ton. So when that update comes out, I will do a follow-up video about it. There's nothing else in the box except a foam cat toy piece and a generic USB-C cord. So when first holding the device, it's a little heavier than I would expect, but it's a nice size. What is weird to me are the controls and their size. The buttons are pretty small, which kind of makes sense because there isn't a whole lot of room on the side. However, what is bizarre is how small the triggers are and the joysticks. Both seem to be cut in half from what I'm usually used to. The controls are very, very low profile, which I guess is good if you're planning on putting this in your pocket. Here is my Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, and comparing the two devices, you can see what I'm talking about. Another thing about the joysticks, they don't click in, so no L3 or R3. I've heard that they are PS Vita joysticks, which don't have that ability. Checking out the D-pad, it's tiny, meaning it's very low profile. Also, it has a soft click to it, unlike bigger D-pads, or the ones from original consoles, which had a rubber membrane connection. It's not bad, it's just different. The buttons are a similar feel with a light click because they are low profile. There isn't a lot of travel to them. So if you don't like having to mash on a button to get it to work, then these might be right for you. Here is a look at what I mean about the low profile. Everything isn't as tall as what it usually is on a handheld or a console controller. Now, it's not a bad thing. I mean, I'll test it out when I get to the gaming, but it's just something that I wanted to point out. It does make it very enticing to throw it in your pocket or a small bag though. All the rest of the buttons, the start, select, and menu on the front, even the power button and volume buttons on the top, all have the same soft click to them. Looking at the bottom, I have a question. I have no idea what this weird little cover is hiding. Is there a tiny gremlin in there inside that powers the device and is plotting my death late at night, or what? There's no mention of what this weird piece is anywhere that I can see. So if you know, please throw it in the comments. The rest of the ports on the bottom, from left to right, at the far left is a lanyard hole, then there is a function switch, which I researched and apparently is a power save switch. I'm convinced that it will bring the death gremlin out, so I'm going to leave it alone. Then in the middle is the USB-C charging port, a microphone, an SD card slot, and the far right, a standard headset jack. And just to show you on the GoGameGeek site, this is going for $79.99, and you can get 10% off with the code that I will leave in the description below. There are two other colors than the black version that I have here. let's turn it on and see what it looks like. At first glance, I got a little worried because there wasn't really anything loaded on the card. It had some compilations like those 401 Game Boy clones for $6. But I did discover that at the top of the user interface, there is a tab menu that will magically show you the plethora of games loaded on the card. But for anyone that has a burning desire to play every remake of Contra, those are loaded on there just for you. Okay, I'll admit it. I had to play a few of these things. I mean, they were there, so why not? One thing that is neat is the arcade vertical shooter section. There are a ton of games that are pre-configured in this section to play in what is called Tate mode, which makes you flip the device vertically and you get more of that old school arcade shmup feel. For anyone who hasn't tried Tate mode, you should. It's pretty fun. Alright, let's check out the real games menu. There we go. Look at all the systems. Now yes, all your 8 and 16-bit systems play great on here. The screen is actually pretty nice and wide, and call me crazy, but the bezels look neat too. Maybe that's just because I generally don't play with bezels on my devices just as a default. You can turn these off in the settings if you want though. Hit the menu button while in a game and then go to advanced settings and it will bring you to RetroArch where you can go in the back end and change your settings. Now this system is one that I don't think I've ever played before, but it fits the aspect ratio of the screen very nicely. So there's a few games on here and you should definitely check this system out. I actually didn't realize that Sega Saturn was on here, and so that was a very nice surprise. And both of these games are running really well. I didn't have any issues with running them. For the higher-end systems like Dreamcast, Saturn, N64, and PSP, there are only a handful of games loaded on the device. I didn't have any issues really with any of the games that I tested. Now, it might be different for other games. Not everything will work on this device, but so far this is promising. Also, I forgot to mention this earlier, but there are dual stereo front-facing speakers on this device, and they are loud. They are located right below the screen. Give a listen. And I'll admit that, look at Cruisin' USA. This game is usually pretty hard to emulate, and it looks really good. There was only one dip that I saw while I was actually playing. It's a little bit past the bridge, and it's running fine. It's very cool that they have Nintendo DS on here. However, I couldn't get it to go full screen, which isn't a huge deal. I just thought that they would have that option. So you can only go with the screens side by side or vertically. Game Boy Advance is another system that fills out the screen and works really well with this aspect ratio. This handheld would make a really nice Game Boy Advance device. So I was surprised to see that God of War Chains of Olympus was actually even loaded on here. Naturally, I had to test it. This game is running really well. I ended up going into the PPSSPP app and just hitting the menu button and changing the resolution to 2x. And I think the game looks even better. I think it still runs really well. It's nice to see that you have access to the PPSSPP app, and you're able to go in and tweak the settings if any game is having issues. Just like I said about Game Boy Advance, the aspect ratio makes this device perfect for these systems. And with it running this game so well, this could potentially be a good fit for a PSP handheld device. So I tried messing around with the USB storage setting, but I couldn't get anything to connect. The device didn't recognize the controller dongle that I plugged in or a flash drive. I tried the top and the bottom ports. I'm not sure what the top USB host port is for or the USB storage app. So the Wi-Fi is working on the device. Here you can see that I add my retro achievements info into RetroArch. Make sure that you turn off hardcore mode because you don't need that added stress in your life. Then I back out and you will see the notification on the screen that I am connected once I enter a game. So my final thoughts on the TrimUI Smart Pro are, honestly, I like it. I didn't think I would, but the device grew on me. I ended up having a lot of fun when playing games on this. I have been interested in the Smart Pro since it launched a few months back. When I got the review unit, like I said earlier in the video, the low profile of the buttons and the triggers kind of threw me off, but after testing it out for a few days, they really aren't bad. My 8-year-old son thinks this is a pretty cool handheld and actually put down his Nintendo Switch to play this for a bit. So that's saying something. Now, would I get this just solely for playing the higher end systems like Dreamcast, N64, Saturn, and PSP? Probably not. For those systems, there are only a few games loaded on the device, and like I have said about other budget handhelds, think of those systems as a bonus. Not all the games are going to play, but you might be surprised at what actually does. Also, like I mentioned earlier, there is a custom firmware that is out, and once it's updated and has Vulkan support, I will do a follow-up video. I always love showing custom firmware to just see what we can get out of a device when we push it just a little bit further and tweak the settings. However, the current stock firmware is not bad at all. I do think that this is a great little device for Game Boy Advance or even some lower-end PSP games. This isn't a bad little device for under $80, especially if you're leaning more towards a horizontal form factor. This is definitely a good play right out of the box device where you don't have to set anything up at all if you don't want to. But those are my thoughts, not yours. Let me know in the comments below if you're going to pick up the TrimUI Smart Pro, or if you have it, and what you think about it. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, and even share this video with someone who should have a pocketable 5-inch screen retro handheld that kind of looks like a PS Vita. They might need this in their life. Thanks for watching. Stay awesome, everyone, and go play some games.